Welcome to the Configuration Mode Overview module. By the end of this module, you should be able to use the Junos OS CLI configuration mode. Unlike software from other vendors, configuration changes made in Junos OS do not take effect immediately. This design feature enables you to group together and apply multiple configuration changes to the running configuration as a single unit. The active configuration is the configuration currently operational on the system, and is the configuration the system loads during the boot sequence. This concept is analogous to both the running configuration and startup configuration in software from other vendors. The candidate configuration is a temporary configuration that might possibly become the active configuration. When you configure a device running Junos OS, the software creates a candidate configuration and initially populates it with a copy of the active configuration running on that device. You then modify the candidate configuration. Once satisfied with your modifications, you can commit the changes. This action causes the candidate configuration to become the active configuration. The configure command causes a candidate configuration to be created and populated with the contents of the active configuration. You can then modify the candidate configuration with your changes. To have a candidate configuration take effect, you must commit the changes. Once a commit command is issued, Junos OS checks the candidate configuration for proper syntax. If the configuration passes the syntax check, Junos OS then makes the candidate configuration the active configuration. If the syntax is not correct, an error message indicates the location of the error, and the software does not activate any part of the configuration. You must correct the errors before recommitting the configuration. You can easily recover previous configurations by using the rollback n command. Junos OS maintains a configuration history by storing previously active configurations. The software saves a maximum of 50 configurations. This number includes the current active configuration, which is also known as rollback 0, and up to 49 previously active configurations. If you perform a rollback operation, keep in mind that the related configuration does not become active until you issue a commit command. When you issue a commit command and 50 rollback configurations exist, the software purges the last rollback configuration, rollback 49. You enter configuration mode by issuing the configure command from within the CLI operational mode. If you enter configuration mode while another user is also in the configuration mode, a message indicates who the user is and what portion of the configuration the user is viewing or editing. In configuration mode, the prompt changes from the angle bracket of operational mode to the pound sign, preceded by the name of the user and the name of the device. The portion of the prompt in brackets, such as Edit, is a banner that specifies your location within the configuration hierarchy. By default, multiple users can enter configuration mode and commit changes. Up to 32 users can be in configuration mode simultaneously, and they can all be making changes to the configuration. All changes made by all users are visible to everyone editing the configuration. The changes become visible as soon as the user presses the Enter key at the end of a command that changes the configuration, such as Set, Edit, or Delete. When any of the users editing the configuration issues a commit command, all changes made by all users are checked and activated. Use the Configure Exclusive command to enable only a single user to edit the configuration. Uncommitted changes are always discarded when you use the Configure Exclusive command. In contrast, uncommitted changes are retained in the candidate configuration when you use the standard configure command. In addition to the configure and configure exclusive commands, there is also the configure private, configure batch, and configure dynamic commands, which can be used to customize the way configuration changes are handled by Junos OS. Entering configuration mode using the configure private command enables multiple users to edit the configuration while committing only their private changes. When in configure private mode, you must commit the configuration from the top of the configuration hierarchy, which is the edit level of the configuration. If private users issue a rollback 0 command, the software discards only their changes. When a user is in private mode, other users must also enter private mode or use configure exclusive to become the primary editor, or they cannot modify the candidate configuration. Exiting private mode without committing changes results in the loss of any modifications made to the private candidate configuration. If two users are in private mode and both make the same change, for example, user 1 changes the system host name to apples, while user 2 sets the host name to oranges, the second commit fails with an error message to avoid configuration conflicts. The software places the second user's changes into effect if user 2 issues a second commit command. When chassis clustering is in effect, the configure private command is automated. In some other environments, you might want to require users to use only configure private. When creating user accounts, it is possible to limit the commands available to users through the assign properties. If a user is in default configuration mode and has altered the candidate configuration, other users cannot enter configuration mode using the exclusive or private options. The changes made by the first user must be committed or canceled prior to any other users entering configuration mode with the exclusive or private options. There are two additional configuration modes, batch and dynamic. The configure batch command is used to enter batch configuration mode where commit operations are executed in batches. Batches are prioritized by the commit server based on the priority of the batch specified by the user, or the time when the batch job is added. When one batch commit is complete, the next set of configuration changes are aggregated and loaded into the batch queue for the next session of the batch commit operation. Batches are created until there are no commit entries left in the queue directory. When compared to the regular commit operation, where all commits are committed independently and sequentially, batch commits save time and system resources by committing multiple small configuration edits in a single commit operation. The commit server properties can be configured at the edit system commit server hierarchy level. The configure dynamic command is used to configure routing policies and certain routing policy objects in a dynamic database that is not subject to the same verification required in the standard configuration database. As a result, the time it takes to commit changes to the dynamic database is much shorter than that for the standard configuration database. You can then reference these policies and policy objects in routing policies you configure in the standard database. Welcome to the Junos OS Configuration Hierarchy module. By the end of this module, you should be able to navigate through the Junos OS configuration hierarchy. In the configuration mode, you enter commands that modify the device configuration. The device configuration is a structured hierarchy. Commands or settings entered at the wrong place in the hierarchy are not accepted. Part of learning Junos OS is learning the configuration hierarchy. The Junos OS configuration hierarchy is different and independent of the Junos OS operational mode hierarchy. For example, the CLI operational mode includes a show command to display specific operational information, while the CLI configuration mode provides a show command to display the statement hierarchy. The two commands are independent of each other. The software organizes the statement hierarchy in a tree structure, similar to Windows folders or Unix directories, grouping related information into a particular branch of the tree. Use set commands in the CLI configuration mode to modify the candidate configuration. Use the show command to display the candidate configuration. Both commands are relative to the current configuration hierarchy shown by the edit prompt. Configuration files use curly brackets and indentation to visually display the hierarchical structure of the configuration. Terminating or leaf statements in the configuration hierarchy are displayed with a trailing semicolon. You enter neither the curly brackets nor the semicolons as part of the set command. to move down through an existing configuration statement hierarchy, or to create a hierarchy and move down to that level, use the Edit command, specifying your desired hierarchy level. After you issue an Edit command, the configuration mode banner changes to indicate your current level in the hierarchy. To move up one level from the current position in the hierarchy, use the Up command. To move up more than one level from the current position in the hierarchy, supply an optional count to the Up command. The software moves you up the specified number of levels or to the top of the hierarchy if there are fewer levels than specified. The Top command quickly moves you to the top of the configuration hierarchy. You can combine Top with Edit to move quickly to a different hierarchy, or with Show to display the configuration details for a different hierarchy, as displayed in the example. Here, the Exit command returns the user to the most recent, higher level of the hierarchy. Entering Exit at the top level of the hierarchy exits configuration mode, as shown in the example. Entering Exit configuration mode from any level of the hierarchy also enables you to exit configuration mode as in the example shown. You can quickly navigate between levels of the configuration hierarchy using the Edit, Up, Top, and Exit commands. Welcome to the Customizing Juniper Device Configuration module. By the end of this module, you should be able to modify the configuration on a Juniper device. Use Set commands in the CLI configuration mode to modify the candidate configuration. Use the configuration mode Delete command to remove statements that you previously added to the configuration with a Set command. This command deletes the statement and all its subordinate statements and identifiers. Deleting a statement or an identifier effectively unconfigures the functionality associated with that statement or identifier, returning that functionality to its default condition. Consider using the wildcard delete function when deleting individual statements is too arduous, and deleting an entire configuration subhierarchy lacks the granularity that you need. The example shows sample syntax for a wildcard delete command. In addition to deleting configuration statements, you should also consider the use of the Deactivate command to cause the specified portion of the configuration hierarchy to be ignored while still retaining the original configuration. Issue an Activate command to place the configuration back into effect. Examples of the Deactivate and Activate commands are provided later in this module. You just disabled an interface with a Set Interfaces, Interface Name, Disable statement. How do you re-enable this interface? Issue a Delete Interfaces, Interface Name, Disable command to delete the disable statement placed into effect with the reference Set command. Note that the double negative in this syntax is correct. You can use the configuration mode Show command to display the candidate configuration. This command displays the configuration at the current hierarchy level or at the specified level below the current location. The Show command has the show statement path syntax. When displaying the configuration, the CLI indents each subordinate hierarchy level, inserts curly brackets to indicate the beginning and end of each hierarchy level, and places a semicolon at the end of statements that are at the lowest level of the hierarchy. The display format is the same format you use when creating an ASCII configuration file, and it is also the same format that the CLI uses when saving a configuration to an ASCII file. In cases where an empty statement leads to an invalid configuration, because it is incomplete or meaningless, the Show command does not display any of the statement path. You can display the individual Set commands used to create the existing configuration file using the Show Pipe Display Set command. An example of this command and its resulting output is displayed. Remember, Junos OS devices do not automatically apply your configuration changes. You must use the Commit command to activate your candidate configuration. You can typically perform the commit operation from any hierarchy level. The exception is when users enter configuration mode using the Configure Private option, which requires the commit command to be issued at the top hierarchy level. On devices with redundant routing engines, or REs, you can perform a commit synchronize command, which activates and synchronizes the configuration on both routing engines. Alternatively, you can configure the system to automatically perform the synchronize operation when a standard commit is issued through the set system commit synchronize command. When you commit a candidate configuration, the software activates the entire configuration in its current form. Use the commit check command to validate the syntax of a candidate configuration without actually placing it into effect. Of course, commit check cannot catch logical errors in your configuration. What happens when you are configuring a device remotely and you make a mistake, like specifying the wrong IP address, that leaves the device inaccessible to remote connections? You can solve this scenario by using the commit confirmed command. When you issue a commit confirmed timeout command, the system starts a timer, during which time it expects to see another commit. If a second commit does not occur within the timeout value specified, the system performs a rollback. The software supports a range of 1 to 65,535 minutes, with 10 minutes being the default for the timeout value. You can also schedule a commit that occurs at a specific time using the commit at time command. This command is useful for synchronizing commits with multiple routers. These routers must have their time synchronized to the same source, likely through Network Time Protocol or NTP, for the commit operations to execute at the same time. To view and clear pending commits, use the Show System Commit and Clear System Commit commands. You can also add a log entry to your commit using the commit comment command. You can add the and quit option to the commit command to activate your changes and exit configuration mode in a single step. Optionally, you can complete the commit process in 2 steps. This enables you to configure several devices, and the configurations can be activated simultaneously. In the first step, known as the preparation stage, the commit is validated and a new database along with necessary files is generated. If the configuration contains any syntax errors, an appropriate error message is displayed, and the configuration is not prepared. In the second step, referred to as the activation stage, the previously prepared configuration is activated and becomes the current operational device configuration. Here is an example to enable Python language scripts within Junos OS, done in 2 steps using the commit prepare and commit activate commands. The show pipe compare command displays the differences between the candidate configuration and the active configuration, also known as rollback 0. Configuration comparison is patch-like and context-sensitive. Thus, instead of showing the entire configuration, the display shows only the actual changes. Using the operational mode Show Configuration Pipe Compare Rollback Number command enables you to determine the differences between the active configuration and the rollback configurations. Junos OS can store up to 49 additional rollback configurations in addition to rollback 0, which is the active configuration. Similarly, the Show Configuration Pipe Compare File Name command enables you to compare the active configuration to an arbitrary file. You can also use the Show Pipe Compare Rollback Number and Show Pipe Compare File Name commands in the configuration mode to compare the candidate configuration with rollback configurations and arbitrary files, respectively. The operational mode File Compare Files command enables you to determine differences between any 2 text files, including log files. The output of this command is in the same patch-like format as the Show Pipe Compare command. The software saves the last 50 committed versions of the configuration. To overwrite the candidate configuration with one of these previously committed versions, use the CLI configuration rollback command. By default, the system returns to the most recently committed configuration, the active configuration. To return to a version prior to the configuration most recently committed, Include the version number in the rollback command. The version argument can be a number in the range 0 through 49. The most recently saved configuration is version 0, which is the active configuration. The oldest committed configuration the software automatically saves is version 49. The factory default configuration on some of the smaller Junos OS devices restricts the number of rollback files stored by the system. This default setting can be changed to increase the number of rollback files as shown. A rescue configuration permits you to define a known working configuration or a configuration with a known state for recovery, if necessary. This alleviates the necessity of having to remember the rollback number with the rollback command. The rescue configuration rolls back the device to a known configuration, or can serve as a last resort if your device configuration and the backup configuration files become damaged beyond repair. To save the most recently committed configuration as the rescue configuration, so that you can return to it at any time, issue the Request System Configuration Rescue Save command. To return to the rescue configuration, use the Rollback Rescue Configuration Mode command. To commit the rescue configuration, thereby activating it, use the Commit command. The option revision was introduced in Junos OS, Release 20.4R1. Using a configuration revision identifier, you can roll back to a specific configuration. The Show System Commit Include Configuration Revision command shows the configuration revision identifier for each revision. The rollback command modifies only the candidate configuration. To activate the changes loaded through the rollback operation, issue the Commit command. As seen earlier, the Configure command causes a candidate configuration to be created and populated with the contents of the active configuration. You can then modify the candidate configuration with your changes. To have a candidate configuration take effect, you must commit the changes. At this time, Junos OS checks the candidate configuration for proper syntax, and it installs it as the active configuration. If the syntax is not correct, an error message indicates the location of the error, and the software does not activate any part of the configuration. You must correct the errors before recommitting the configuration. You can easily recover previous configurations with a rollback N command. Junos OS maintains a configuration history by storing previously active configurations. The software saves a maximum of 50 configurations. This number includes the current active configuration, which is also known as rollback 0, and up to 49 previously active configurations. If you perform a rollback operation, keep in mind that the related configuration does not become active until you issue a commit command. When you issue a commit command and there are 50 rollback configurations, the software purges the last rollback configuration, rollback 49. The rollback rescue command can be used to return the configuration to a known good state in case of emergency. In addition to the usual static configuration database, Junos OS also provides ephemeral databases, one default and up to 7 user-named ephemeral databases. Ephemeral databases execute commits with significantly greater throughput than when doing a standard commit using the CLI. Ephemeral database commits are performed using the JET API or the Junos OS XML API. You do not commit to the ephemeral database using the CLI. The ephemeral database is advantageous in dynamic environments where fast provisioning and rapid configuration changes are required, such as in large data centers. Although the ephemeral database can perform thousands of commits per minute, it comes at a cost. When committing to the ephemeral database, basic syntax checks are made, but semantic checks are skipped. When your configuration references a policy or rule that does not exist, it passes the syntax check, but possibly causes a wide array of errors once the configuration gets committed. Another reason an ephemeral database commit is so fast is that Junos OS limits which configuration statements can be committed to the configuration database. Regardless of which database receives the configuration changes, all changes are merged to create a merged view as shown. If there are conflicts between databases, The ephemeral configuration database instance 1 takes priority, followed by the others. Note that you can learn more about the ephemeral databases at the Juniper Tech Library website. You can access the website from the reference links document. Welcome to the Common Configuration Mode Commands module. By the end of this module, you should be able to use Common Configuration Mode commands. You can save the candidate configuration from your current configuration session to an ASCII file using the Save command. Saving a candidate configuration saves the configuration in its current form, including any uncommitted changes. Note that you are saving only the configuration statements at the current hierarchy level and below. To save the entire candidate configuration, you must be at the top level of the configuration hierarchy. If you do not specify a path, Junos OS saves the configuration to the user's working directory. For example, if user Nancy saved a configuration file without specifying a path name, the configuration file would be saved in the /var/home/Nancy directory by default. You can specify a file name in one of the displayed ways. You can use the configuration mode load command to load a complete or partial configuration from a local file, from a file on a remote machine, or from a terminal emulation program's capture buffer. The load command supports several arguments that determine the specifics of the operation. The following list provides details for some of the arguments to the load command. Factory default, which replaces the full current configuration with the factory default configuration. Merge, which combines the current configuration with the configuration you load. Override, which completely overwrites the current configuration with the configuration you load. You must perform override operations at the root of the configuration hierarchy. Patch, which adds or deletes variables from the configuration based on the contents of a specified patch file. The patch file used in this operation uses the contextual diff format. The file generated from a show pipe compare pipe save operation creates such a file. Replace searches for a replace tag in the configuration you load. The software replaces existing statements of the same name with those in the loaded configuration for stanzas. Set, which enables users to load set commands from the terminal or from a save file that consists of set configuration statements. Update, which updates the existing configuration with the configuration you load. When the update option is used, Junos OS attempts to notify only those processes affected by the configuration changes. When the override option is used, Junos OS makes no such attempt. You can use the update option from any hierarchy, but you can use the override option only from the top-level hierarchy. Terminal, which uses the text you type at the terminal as input to the configuration. Press Ctrl+D to end terminal input. This option is usually used in conjunction with the terminal emulation program's copy and paste functionality to copy and paste configuration data from one system to another. Normally, a load merge or load replace operation requires that the data you load contains a full path to the related configuration hierarchy. The relative option negates this need by informing the device to add the data you load relative to the current configuration hierarchy. In all cases, after the load operation is complete, you must issue a commit to activate the changes made to the configuration. The displayed output illustrates the list of configuration mode commands. Note that the full list of configuration mode commands can be viewed in the configuration provided in the Resources section. Regardless of the method and commands you use to update your configuration file, you must issue the commit command to activate changes. Here are a few commonly used configuration commands in Junos OS. Rename, which is used for renaming purposes. For example, renaming an interface. Replace, which searches for a replace tag in the configuration you load. Copy, which copies a configuration statement to another statement. For example, the copy interfaces GE0/0/10 to GE0/0/11 command copies all configurations on GE0/0/10 into GE0/0/11. Deactivate, which ignores a configuration statement without deleting it. It can later be made active based on requirement. Insert, which helps to insert a new statement into a list. Annotate, which helps to add a comment to configured statement. More detailed examples are shown next. The displayed example shows the deactivate, activate, and annotate commands and their output. This is a sample code block that displays the deactivate command along with its output. This is a sample code block that displays the activate command along with its output. This is a sample code block that displays the annotate command along with its output. Using the insert command along with the before and after keywords, you can rearrange configuration statements as shown in the output. Junos OS processes certain configuration hierarchies, such as routing policies and firewall filters, in sequence from top to bottom. This insert command comes in handy while configuring these features. As seen, the newly added term T2 is placed at the bottom. To move it to the top, we can use the insert term T2 before term T1 command. In this example, another new term T3 got added and is placed at the end, default behavior. To insert this term T3 between the two existing terms, T1 and T2, you can use the insert term T3 after term T2 command. The same effect can be achieved with the insert term T3 before term T1 command as well. The run command enables you to execute operational mode commands while in configuration mode. It is similar to the do command on equipment from other vendors, but much more flexible. This extremely handy time saver works for all operational mode commands, and the software supports it at all configuration hierarchies. In the example displayed, you are editing the configuration for the device's GE0/0/12 interface. After assigning what you hope to be the correct IP address, you commit the change and invoke the run command to execute a quick ping test.